this is Dom or DNAC, and today I'm going to be making another tutorial for you guys. Today's tutorial is going to be on this sort of goopy background effect. There's a bunch of different variations of this effect, but this one I thought it came out pretty cool, so I thought I'd show you guys how to do it today. Here's what the effect is more or less going to look like. As you can see, it's just this trippy, like, warping color action going on, and yeah, let's jump right into it. Really quick before we get started, if you guys wouldn't mind dropping a thumbs up on this video and maybe consider subscribing, I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you want to see more of my work or see what other projects I'm working on currently, go ahead and check out my Instagram and my TikTok. I'll link those both down in the description below. But with that being said, thank you guys and enjoy the video. So as for most of these background effects go, you're going to want to mask out the subject of your footage. And you're going to do that by using the rotor brush tool. So to do that, you're going to double click on the layer of your footage there. Click the little guy with the paintbrush, and then you're going to start masking out your subject. So if you guys don't know how to rotor brush, I will link a tutorial down in the description. It's pretty simple. You just kind of go through like this and outline the subject here, and once you have that done, you can go through frame by frame just to make sure that you did a good job with your mask. Like I said, I'll link a more detailed tutorial on that. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get this all masked out, and I will see you guys when I'm done. Once you guys have your subject all masked out like this, you're going to want to duplicate this layer, go to the bottom one and delete the roto off of it so it brings back the background. What you're going to want to do from here is duplicate this bottom layer again. So now you have two of these, and just to make this easier, we'll rename these. We'll change this to background. We'll rename this to effects, and then we'll rename the top one to roto. So now once you have this basic setup here, you're ready to start sort of building the effect. So to start building the effect, you're going to want to go over to the right hand side of your screen here and click where it says effects and presets. Type in an effect called twirl. Built-in effect, this comes with everyone's After Effects. Drop that down onto the layer that says effect. Basically all this effect does is, you can see when you turn this little dial here, it sort of twists your footage around depending on the direction that you want it to go. And for this tutorial, we're going to actually have the effect start at a already distorted setting and then fade out into a more normal setting rather than increasing into a distortion. I think this looks pretty good. We'll keyframe the angle and the twirl radius at the start of your clip. Drag out to around the end of your clip or the very end, and keyframe everything back to 0. If you play this back, you can see what the effect you put on just did. Next, we're going to grab an effect called Emboss Glass and drop that down on the same effect layer. As you can see, this obviously is pretty ugly, but we're going to mess with the settings here. And this is where your guys' own kind of creativity and experimentation is going to come into play, because obviously every clip isn't going to be the exact same, so this effect might not look the same on a clip that you might be trying it on or a different video, just based on the background and what's in the footage. All these settings here that you see I use, they might work for yours, but I would highly encourage you to just experiment and find something that works for you. It's never a good idea to just copy and paste things that you see. It's always better to try and find something that works for you and put your own spin on certain effects that you see, especially ones that you watch a tutorial for, because generally these are the ones that just get copy and pasted, so you want to stand out somehow. More or less all I did was I increased this bump smooth so it creates this more goopy looking situation going on. And then you can increase the brightness, things like that, make it more shiny, make it more dull. The bump's threshold pretty much just like cuts them out, pretty much just keys it away. There's a whole bunch of other different settings on this effect here. You can mess with them and see what they do. But for the sake of this tutorial, we'll just kind of keep it straightforward here. So right here where it says bumps threshold, we're going to click the stopwatch to set a keyframe. Go over to the end of your clip, and then you can increase this value so you don't see that emboss glass effect anymore. When you play it back, it should look something like that. So you have the effect on here mixed with the twirl, and then towards the end goes back to the normal footage. But this does look a little dark, so I'm going to increase increase brightness a bit. Like I said earlier, everybody's footage is going to be different, so if you have a shot that might be brighter than this one, you might need to turn it down. Or in my case, if you have a shot that you need to look a little bit brighter, you can increase this value here to bring up the brightness. And that will leave us with something like this. Next, you're going to grab an effect called Turbulent Displace. Go ahead and add that onto the effect clip as well. All these effects that we're going to be adding are all going on this effect layer just for the rest of this video. And what I did was I increased the size. I left the amount as what it was, and then I keyframed the size at the beginning, went to the end of the clip and brought this back down to around 100. So essentially creating like this wavy warping type of deal. And it basically just adds a lot more life to the effect as a whole rather than it being kind of still as it was. So again, the same as the other effects, feel free to change these values. You can turn up the amount, get some pretty crazy looks just by experimenting. Honestly, this looks pretty cool just with the amount turned up, but I'm gonna go ahead and turn it down just a little bit. Probably have it something like that. So next you're gonna wanna add a glow. You can use any glow that you want. If you have a bunch of different plugin glows, feel free to use whichever one that you like the most. I personally use Sapphire Glow, so that's what I'm gonna use for this tutorial. Usually always turn down the glow width a bit, mess with the threshold just to kind of see what I'm working with. Probably just gonna leave that as is, and then turn down the brightness a bit just so it's not too overpowering. Play it back just to kind of see what it looks like. So even this might be a bit too bright. Turn down the brightness a little bit more, and probably just go with something like that. As always, all these values, feel free to change them. Don't be scared to just mess something up, because even if you do something that you don't like, you can always just hit Control Z and you'll be right back to where you started. Next, this is just something I did for the effect at the beginning of the video, but if you already like the way this looks with these colors, that's perfectly fine. But what I did was grabbed a hue saturation, keyframed the color range, went to the end of the clip, and then where it says master hue right here, I typed in 1, so it's going to do 1 evolution of the color wheel. So as you can see here, it just kind of scrolls through the rainbow and it adds a lot more to the effect. But obviously if you want the effect to be a little bit more subtle, I'd probably go without that, just because the crazy rainbow stuff might be a little bit too much depending on the look you're going for or the footage you're using. But in this case, I think it looks pretty cool, so I definitely added that on. And that's more or less how I built the effect. Everything from here, like I said in the beginning of the video, is up to your guys' experimentation and messing with these settings, adding on different effects. You can really turn this into a completely different looking effect, which is ideally the goal here, is to just give you guys something to build from and to experiment with. So say even for instance, like having this, you can add another turbulent displace onto this clip again and just make the amounts different. And as you can see, it already adds like a lot more to the effect. It just makes it way more crazy. There's a whole bunch of other different distort effects that come built into After Effects, and you can just add some of these on, mess with them. Some of them might look awful, some of them might look good. It's always good to try and experiment, because you never know what you might stumble across, and honestly 100% of the time you're bound to stumble across an effect that just looks way crazier than what you initially had in mind or what you were actually going for. That's why I always encourage people to just try and experiment with certain things rather than just asking people how to do them. Obviously this is a generic tutorial just to give you guys a foundation to build from. This just kind of goes to show what is possible when you just mess around with certain things and you stumble across different looks and different ways to kind of create your own style. So please, if you ever watch any of my tutorials specifically or anyone else's, don't just copy and paste them. If you're learning, that's perfectly fine, but if you really want to get better and learn more, it's always better to just experiment, change settings around, add stuff on, take stuff off. It's always better to try and mix it up and be different so you can stand out a little bit more. But yeah guys, with that being said, I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful. If you did, let me know down in the comments below. And if you guys have anything that you might want to see a tutorial on in the future, feel free to leave that down in the comments as well, or shoot me a DM on Instagram, and I'll definitely take everything into consideration. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.